since I cannot really repay them for what they did, the best I can do is I can try to pay it forward to the next generation who came after me. It taught me a very valuable lesson in life that you should not think about mentoring and sponsoring and watching out for others as a transaction. As in, you should not do it in a way that you expect something in return. Like, I do it for you, and then you do it for the next guy. And if that chain doesn't get broken very much, the world around us will improve really fast. Many mentors, and I'm pretty convinced there wasn't a lot that I could do directly for them. Obviously, my work helped their business and so on. What they taught me was, because they took an interest in me practically for random reasons, I started developing that attitude as well, that you watch out for the people who come after you and help them, and life will become so much more meaningful.
Hello, fellow leaders. My name is Prasad Vadlamani, and I'm your host of the Indian Leadership Podcast. Today, I welcome you to a powerful and hard-hitting episode with Vijay Vijayasankar. We couldn't decide which parts of our long, interesting conversation to edit out, so we are releasing it in 2 parts. In the second part of this episode, while he spoke about the importance of mentoring, Vijay was emphatic about sponsoring others who have a potential towards greatness, with the thought that any of them could become his future boss. While seeking mentors, he encourages to have more than one, possibly 3 mentors, who you can seek guidance from. Otherwise, you could risk becoming a mirror reflection of your mentor. He asks leaders to selflessly give a chance to anyone with potential, irrespective of their race, country of origin, or gender, and be genuinely interested in their success. There's a lot more he spoke about this and many other topics, so enjoy and learn. You also mentioned that your boss has created a safe environment for you, like in order to make the transition, right? So, and on that point, I want to ask, like, are there any role models for you in career, or the mentors who helped you in any of these transitioning?
Several. I would probably start by saying it's a good idea to have more than one mentor at any given point in time, because the thing with mentors, right, is you learn everything that is good about them, but in the same spirit, you also inherit all their weaknesses. Mm-hmm. So you do need to know that this is a potential risk if you only have one mentor. So I realized it the hard way, that woke up one day, realized why I was messing up. I spoke with my mentor, and he couldn't spot it either. He said, that's exactly what I would have done. And that night it dawned on me that that's exactly right. I am now his mini me. I won't name the guy because he probably will listen to this, and I don't want him to feel bad. But everything, he 100% would have done what I did in that particular situation. And when I explained it to him, he couldn't suggest anything else either. While I felt good that I did everything that the man I looked up to also would have done, that evening it dawned on me that, but that is also my weakness, because I cannot see past and neither can he. So I need to find other mentors too, right? So always have multiple mentors. I would also say that mentoring has improved to a level where I think a lot of people are over-mentored. But mentoring alone doesn't help the people being mentored. You also need to take a step further and actively sponsor people, right? Mm-hmm. You have to be their champions. You have to make a case for their promotions or get them stretch assignments and so on. Mentoring cannot be this activity. Mentoring, doesn't always translate to action. Yeah. Sponsorship and championing translates to action. And I think that is what is largely missing in the world today. That especially, and I'll give you an example. When I was growing up, there weren't too many Indian executives in the system. There were, but only a few. I did not know anybody at a higher level who is Indian that I could look up to and go have a meaningful conversation and so on. And consequently, I had very low ambitions in my corporate life, because I figured if no Indian made it very far in this setup, it's a high chance that I also, I mean, this is way before, we had Sundar Pichai and Arvind Krishna and Satya Nadella and all running huge big companies, right?
Right.
So at that time, this was not as common. So I had set my ambitions really low when I look back, but it was actually two white gentlemen who took an interest in me and actively mentored me and championed me and made sure I had the best opportunities to work on and so on. And when I look back, that is, I cannot really do and unfortunately one of them, Mr. John Leffler, is not there anymore, right? I mean, I'm super grateful to him for what he did. He had no reason to do it, did not have to do it, but he still did. And, I'll forever be grateful for him. Another guy is Ken England, has been my mentor for a long time, probably for the last 15, 16 years. These guys had no real reason to watch out for me. There were definitely more talented people around that they could have, but they did. They watched out for me, gave me a lot of opportunities, and I'll always be grateful. Since I cannot really repay them for what they did, the best I can do is I can try to pay it forward to the next generation who came after me. So that's where I focus on, right? So it taught me a very valuable lesson in life, that you should not think about mentoring and sponsoring and watching out for others as a transaction. As in, you should not do it in a way that you expect something in return. You do it for, like I do it for you, and then you do it for the next guy. And if that chain doesn't get broken very much, the world around us will improve really fast. If you start expecting that, yeah, I'm going to help Vijay, but only because Vijay is supposed to do something in return, there's a good chance that will not be very genuine, and it will fall apart, right? So yeah, many mentors, and I'm pretty convinced there wasn't a lot that I could do directly for them. Obviously, my work helped their business and so on. But I think what they taught me was, because they took an interest in me practically for random reasons, I started developing that attitude as well, that you watch out for the people who come after you and help them. This also means that you don't put any barriers to that. So if I start thinking that Indian men should watch for Indian men, that model is pretty flawed.
Right.
So it shouldn't matter. Whoever is deserving on a merit basis, who has the potential that you can see, help them. Don't think about gender or race or which country they were born and other things. We are all humans to begin with, right? There's no reason to put these artificial boundaries in that, and life will become so much more meaningful.
How do you approach in like wanting the leadership role? I would ask you to define leadership like how you see it. Like some people think that being a manager and growing in the manager path is leadership. Some people feel scope of work or different thing, right? Like how do you approach like wanting to be a leader? Was it a easy path or easy decision, or is it difficulty? How did that?
It is a difficult question for me to answer, because I didn't have a conscious strategy about it when I think about it. But over time, I've developed a philosophy around it. And what is a leader? I mean, there are two ways. Right? There's a physical definition, is a title that gives you command and control, authority, right? And responsibility for people. But even in that world of titles, it comes with authority and responsibility. When we think about leadership as mostly authority, it is very ineffective. When we think about it as largely responsibility, as in I'm responsible for people and I can delegate authority, it works, right? That's when they think about you as a leader. I find the leader versus manager debate fairly academic, so I don't particularly care by what word people choose to call them.
Right.
But if you are a leader, somebody should willingly follow you.
Yeah.
Otherwise, there is no reason to call yourself a leader, right? But what makes people follow you? You should be of some value to them, right? Either you provide a sense of safety, or you provide growth, or something. There should be some use for others. So leadership is vastly about other people that you can help, guide, support, etc. Less about, I tell you to do this and you have to do it, and if you don't do it, I'll cause you some grief, right? Completely wrong way to look at leadership. A more nuanced view would be, how do you lead in a way that you create even more leaders in the system around you? I have gotten to that stage in my thinking where I start thinking about my team as the next set of leaders, and taken to an extreme, there are many people I mentor who I have a lot of surety that before I retire, I'll get to work for them. That also means that leaders need to be secure, right? If you start worrying about, oh my God, if I give this person a leg up, the next thing he progresses faster than I do, or she progresses faster than I do, and then I'd work for this person, that will be so unfair. No, life in general is not very fair, and you have to make peace with that. There are always going to be some people who are smarter or luckier or whatever, right? Have more IQ,
more ambitions.
You have to make peace with that. If you don't make peace with that, you will be miserable as a human being, right? So all this crisis that we generate, we build for ourselves halfway through our careers, it is because of this insecurity, and you have to let it go. You have to fight that, because if you don't, you will just end up as a completely miserable person. And there's no problem in having ambition. I'm all for having ambitions. But to answer your specific question on, should we ask for leadership roles? I think you should ask for leadership roles if that's what you want to do. Not just leadership roles, whatever you want in life. You should feel comfortable to ask for it. You may not get it. There are many cases where there were things that I wanted to do, and my leaders felt I'm not the best candidate for that role. That's completely fine. But if you don't register your ambition, they will never know, and you probably will never get.
Right.
So you have practically nothing to lose by asking and everything to gain. So as a general principle, I encourage everybody to register their ambitions with people who can make it happen. Whether it actually happens or not, different topic, and it probably needs a lot more action. It's also a good chance for you to have a meaningful discussion and find out, why are you not the right person for that job? What gaps do you have to cover to be eligible for that? And you may come to the conclusion, as I did in some cases, that now that I know what it takes to get there and how life will be at that level, I don't want it.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
There are lots of people who believe that giving up is a bad trait and you should keep fighting and so on. I don't think that is true at all. There are some things that I know I'm totally not capable of. I don't waste time and energy worrying about those things, right? When I'm convinced that there is no viable path, I give up, and I feel no regrets about it. I'm certainly not superhuman, and the faster I realize what I cannot accomplish, the more peaceful my life is. So it doesn't work for everybody, but that's how I think about life, right? That
Sure.
I don't mind giving up on stuff that I don't have a realistic chance of getting it done.
Yeah, makes sense, right? I mean, you have to set desirable and also achievable goals, right?
Exactly.
Both have to match.
I mean, you need to stretch sufficiently, right? If all you plan for are things, that you anyway will get, that's no fun either. So you have to stretch, but stretching for the hill is a lot different than stretching for the moon. Some people are driven to stretch for the moon, and I have nothing but respect for them. I am not wired that way. I have a pretty good grip on what I am capable of. If anything, I manage the situation by surrounding myself with people who are incredibly smarter than I am. So if I do need to find a way to stretch to the moon, it won't be because I can stretch for the moon, but I surround myself with people who together can probably stretch for the moon.
So being an immigrant, right? Do you think that the immigrant experience, growing up in a different culture and being in here, you think that would have helped you in your leadership growth, or you think would have?
Sure. Yeah, I think so. To begin with, it builds resiliency in you, right? Because the immigration process, at least in this country, right, it's just one hurdle after another with a lot of failures along the way and frustration, and you learn to deal with it. And it happens over a long period of time with no finite end date. So it's a good life lesson, right, on how to become resilient and work a process, which is largely true in business as well. So I am fairly convinced that the immigrant experience was a good one. I also realized that the immigrant experience teaches you some good lessons. Like for the first, say, 2/3 of the time I was here, I figured the immigrant thing to do is when I see bad things, I should keep quiet, keep my head down, and go forward because I don't belong. I no longer think that. Now I think, and that's probably because I've jumped to the other shore and, I got my citizenship and so on. My current thinking is, no, there is no reason to keep quiet. And those who can afford to do so should shout at the top of their voices when they see things that are just not right. So I take fairly public stances on things I care about. I have, like many other immigrants, heard comments of the extent, go back to where you're from. Yep. This is our country.
Very common thing. Yep.
Now I am comfortable enough to say, no, shut up, because it's my country too. So there are those kinds of things, right? So, but I can't say that today. I couldn't say that, 15 years or 20 years ago. But I think it is on people who have gone through that experience. I think that is the onus to make sure that you also need to be the voice for the people who are coming after you, because they have a lot of difficulties expressing it themselves. So you have to, wherever possible, right? Not like it's a crusade or anything.
Of course, yes.
But I feel strongly that when I see an injustice and I feel strongly about it, I will raise it in public, and I'm happy to take the consequence for that.
So we'll move into discussing a little bit more family, personal stuff, right? So tell us about your family, share the details, whatever you're comfortable about. And what do you think is, whether it is easy raising a family here or in India, if you have any comments or around that.
So the quick update on family is happily married. Wife is Tanya. She is a civil engineer, works as a realtor in Arizona. One daughter, Shreya, she's 16, high school senior. So next year will be college. And since neither my wife nor I went to college in this country, we are learning the process along the way as well, right? So thankfully, there are many other colleagues and friends who are in a similar boat. And some of the kids are a little older than my daughter. So I have a few role models to learn from. Now, about raising a family in this country versus India, I do visit India fairly often, so I'm not detached, right? I'm not a foreigner in that sense. India of my childhood is very different from the India today, right? So the last couple of decades, that I've mostly lived here, India has changed sufficiently that I don't think there is as much of a difference today as it used to be.
Yeah.
If I if I think about how my dad and mom lived at my age, I think the quality of life perhaps was higher for them. It was a fairly predictable work schedule. My father would come back home, mostly around 5:30. Then he will have a lot of time for me and my sister and my mom. We'll go out, have dinner, play in the park, whatever, do our homework. Weekends or even some weeknights, we'll visit friends and eat with them and play with them. That doesn't happen as much here, because at least in consulting, right, most of your friends from work are spread all over the country, so it's not like over the weekend you can go meet people. So we do socialize, but it is not as social as it used to be from my childhood. But when I go to India and talk to my younger cousins and so on who are living there, it looks like it's not that different for them. I mean, obviously a lot more of the family is closer, but it's a blessing and a curse, right? So you get used to the version of privacy in this country. India still doesn't respect privacy as much you do, and they don't. And I can balance both these perspectives because I grew up there and then came here. So I walk into a wedding when I'm on vacation, and it would be completely normal for one of my father's friends to pull me aside and just ask me straight up, how much money do you make now?
Yes.
Right? Or what car do you drive? How much did you pay for that? Something that will never happen in this country, but completely normal there.
Right.
It is difficult, but I also know that it's not because they are envious. It's they genuinely think of you as their kid too.
Yeah.
Right. So, like if I couldn't find my mother, any of my dad's friends' wives would have been a perfect surrogate for me. Right. If I needed something, right. If I needed to pay my school fees in a hurry and I couldn't find my father or mother, I could have called anybody in that network and they wouldn't think two times, right? They would probably run to the school and pay that fee immediately. Yeah. That kind of a relationship, I don't think exists here for me.
Yeah.
So I wish, we could take the best of both sides and kind of make it work, but it is purely wishful thinking, right? So I'm completely at peace with raising my family here. Better infrastructure, better quality of life. It's just a matter of perspective, and I'm not sure even my daughter grew up here, so I don't even know how well she will adjust if we move back to India and try to live there. Probably difficult for her. I mean, she grew up with Indian values, but not in India, so
right.
It's a culture shock every time we go back, right? She thinks about herself as a half Indian, half American. And I know it is stressful, right, for girls,
right.
For kids, not as much for me because I kind of knew what is expected as normal there. Right. But whereas if that question on how much money do you make came to my daughter when she's older, I'm pretty sure it'll freak her out.
Yeah. I mean, I think they ask for the salary because of the conversion. It gives a really large number. Right. Yes. So I think they ask for a shock value.
Yeah, it is. So not only is it a shock value, that news will spread pretty fast too, right? So
yes, of course.
You tell somebody and then you're all sitting together and eating after the wedding. And this dude will shout at his friend sitting 15 seats away. Hey, this is, our friend's son. Guess how much money he makes. Completely normal in that setup.
Right.
But I sit there sweating. Right, not knowing how to react.
Yeah, it's glass door, right? Basically, we out there. It's out there.
It is out there. So it's a fine line to walk. Like, I also don't want to offend these people. They're older, and I've known them all my life. I treat them the same as my father. So I don't want to lie to them. So I try to walk a fine line, but it's not easy.
It's not easy. Yeah. But did your daughter grew up like having strong bonds with her cousins in India, or any distant family in India?
Unfortunately not. That is a big regret because I'm very close to my cousins. We would vacation at our grandparents' house when we were kids. We still keep in touch, right? So I could call any of my cousins with the same freedom as I call my younger sister. Zero issues, right? If I want one of my cousins to go check on my mother in Trivandrum, I'll do it with as much freedom as I can do with my sister who lives in Dallas. I unfortunately, my daughter only has one cousin, my sister's son. They are close, but the extended family, like my cousin's kids and so on, my daughter doesn't even know very well. Right? She gets to see them once or twice a year when we go to India or they visit here or we, something like that. But they're not close like how I was close to my cousins. So that's definitely a regret. I think it's the same difficulty. My daughter is close to her grandparents, both grandmothers, both the grandfathers are dead now. But it's not the same as how close I was to my grandmother because I practically lived with her. Right? So a long distance relationship, even though both my mother and my mother-in-law visit us very often, it's not the same, right? It's
right.
not the same.
Yeah. So, I have the same thing, right? I'm the eldest, from both my mom and dad's side, I'm the eldest among all the cousins. And I'm so elder in some of them, like my daughter is closer to my youngest cousin's age. My daughter is not that old, like she's only 8 years old. But, I find that keeping in touch with my daughter's direct cousins, like my siblings' kids, they are in India. I have 2 younger sisters, but my cousins who I'm close to, now making an effort to keep them all together, like, making them talk about it. Now they want to just play Roblox games or something like that more than talking. But I'm like, if that is the way that they're going to communicate, I'm okay with that, like let them do what it is to build some bonds. Now we come into the advice part. Do you have any advice to upcoming leaders, who are getting started or mid-career professionals who want to take on bigger roles, anything like that?
Advice is probably a heavy-duty word for what I'm about to say, but my perspective for what it's worth. I think a big reason people are successful is because they manage their time wisely. Everything else can be somehow repaired, right? You lose money, you can make more money. You break a relationship with some effort, you can probably rebuild that relationship. You waste an hour's time, you cannot get that hour back, right? So managing time wisely is very important. But when I say managing time, it doesn't mean that managing time for work. It means managing time for life in general, of which work is one part. So what does that mean? It means there's only a finite amount of time and brain capacity that all of us have. And if you don't qualify what you want to spend that on, you will not move very far in life, right? This is the one fundamental truth that I honestly believe in. So I ask myself whether things are fine the way it is. If it is fine the way it is, I don't care. I don't want to work on it very much, right? Sure. Am I the right person to change it, or are there better qualified people to change it? If I am the right person, then I would like to work on it. And the third question I ask is now the right time to work on it, as opposed to tomorrow or next year or whatever? If I know the answer to these 3 questions, I consider it a worthwhile endeavor. This is true whether it is something I want to design in terms of technology, or whether it is about sales, or pretty much anything that I want to spend time on. I think through this, and many a time I would rather not work on something that is low value and use that time to listen to some music or go sleep or find something else to do to recharge myself, than work on some mediocre low value activity. This has generally helped me a lot in my career. And I have tremendous respect for people who use their time well. I know a lot of people take pride in saying I was in back-to-back meetings, and my general question is, did you really accomplish very much?
Yep.
I personally cannot handle 8 meetings in a day because my body, right, my arms and legs are available, but my brain is not available for 8 hours. I'm incapable of having a high quality 8 meetings in a day. I would much rather have 2 or 3 meetings and spend the other 5 hours executing on what needs to be done, thinking through what needs to happen in the future, helping somebody else remove an obstacle, etc. But it all comes down to qualifying what you should work on, right? So once you master that, both in terms of efficiency and effectiveness, right? So efficiency we will master because most of us are very good at that and it's easy. It's mostly mathematical in nature. Effectiveness is a little more difficult because it needs this holistic thinking. 10 years ago, if I had an extra hour, I'll try to finish the low value activities at work. Today, if I find an extra hour, I'll go read a book or try to catch some sleep or listen to music or something of that nature. Because I try to take a more holistic approach to life. That's what I would, and if I really wish I had that perspective earlier in life, but that is what, I wouldn't call it advice per se, but it has definitely helped me, right? Thinking in terms of what I spend time on has been a big reason why, I survived or thrived.
So what is one action you want our listeners to do as a first step towards leadership? If, any action that they need to do.
Yeah, I think you should, the short version of what I just said above is learn to say no.
Yeah.
That is my number one recommendation for success. Vast majority of the things people ask you for are low in value, and you need to learn to say no to that. The more no's you say, you're sparing more brain capacity and time to do things that you actually can do to add value. So if I leave you with one message, it is learn to say no.
Yeah.
And that 3-question process I explained before is a good way to think through when you should say no. Absolutely. And magically, when you go through those 3 questions, I'm pretty sure most of us will find that 90% of the time, no is the right answer. Very, very few things where yes is the right default answer. And I say it tongue in cheek, right? It's not to appear negative or aloof or anything. It's just that, you need to think through what is value adding and what is mundane, and avoid as much of the mundane as you need to, and do the high value things, right? You reserve your brain capacity and your time to do the high value things.
Absolutely. Great advice. Yeah. If you can say anything and place a billboard anywhere in the world, right? What does it say, and where do you want to put that billboard?
If I could put a billboard, the billboard is certainly not going to have my name or face for sure. Very few people know me, so seeing my face on it or name on it wouldn't attract anybody to read what is there. I would probably say something along the lines of slow down. I think the world is too busy as it is, and I think we will all enjoy each other's company and the nature around us if only we take a moment to look around and enjoy and calm down and relax. So I think my billboard would just in big bold letters say slow down. I'm sure if I think through more, I can come up with something more elegant, but this is the first thing that comes to mind. Now, where will I place this? I'm not sure about that either, but in my line of work, I think it is probably best placed in an airport. Because people like me, right, we spend a good part of our life traveling from one airport to another, which thankfully in the last 18 months I haven't had to do. But I think airport will be a really good place to do it, because if you watch people coming out of an airport, it surprises me that more people are not falling down, because 90% of their attention is on the phone.
Right.
Whether they are on an escalator or at a coffee shop or just getting out of the gate, it is like magical how that place flows, because 90% of the attention, right? Everybody is doing something on the phone.
Yeah.
So, I think that's where I would put it in big, bright letters.
Yeah, I mean, there is it need not be rehearsed answer. It is a fun question, and whatever is going through your mind at that time, that's appropriate, right? So thank you, Vijay. This has been a great fun for me. I hope you had fun too, answering this.
Thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. Hopefully, yes, it is of some use to someone.
I'm sure there are a lot of people who will find value in it.